So we've created a light rig that is usable, sort of. It's very, very basic, but it's something. And I want to go ahead and create an assembly just so you can see how that works. And then as we create more and more complex light rigs, you'll know exactly how to take care of them. So let's go to our Layout tab again. We'll go down to Palettes and down to Groups. As we've done all the time in the past, we're going to create a new group. And this is going to be our Light Poly 01A group, assembly group that is. And I'll change my type to assembly. And then mode will be empty, as we've always done. We'll click OK. Now we have a completely empty assembly group, right? So let's add all of the items that we need for our assembly group. And this is important, this is why it's important, I should say, that we started with a completely blank document. Now we don't have any stuff confusing us in terms of what should be in this group and what shouldn't. Let's just add everything. We're going to add in our sphere and material. We're going to add in all of these locators and mesh items and matrix compositions and deformers, everything. So now if I expand the items here, everything in my scene, all of the locators and all of their various relating mechanisms are listed as a part of this assembly. So I'll close this up. And by default, it has dropped us into the assembly area of our setup area. If I go to Assemblies here and double-click on this, it brings us into an assembly. And so you can see at the top it says Light Poly 1A Group, Assembly Group. And once again, if you work with Rich Hurry's rigging tutorials, which I highly, highly recommend, then you will much better understand what's going on here. So I have all of this stuff. I'm just going to drag it out where we can see all of it, bit by bit here. And then I like to drag everything out so that you can see what applies to what really easily. Once this stuff is all out here, it's really easy to tell who's controlling whom. All right, and one thing I'm watching for are little yellow circles, and right now I'm not seeing any, which is a good thing. But watch this. Let me just give you an example. If I select this, right-click, and remove node from this assembly, you'll see that I get a yellow circle around this input. That's telling me that this input is actually controlled by something that is not in my assembly. You might want to think about adding it. So I'm going to take that and middle-click it, which is going to bring in the object that was missing. But everything else seems to be here. We have a very nice self-contained assembly all ready to use. And in this case, since we aren't doing anything fancy in terms of inputs and outputs, we won't even assign any inputs or outputs to this thing. Let's just add a root locator. That's usually a good idea. So I'll say add item, locators, locator. I'm going to rename this Light Poly Root. And I'm going to make everybody in here a child of that locator, right? I'm going to add that locator to our assembly. I'm going to right-click on that and assign assembly root item. And once again, we'll name this Light Poly Root. It's kind of redundant. And click OK. Now, when we go back, it's going to be a great big green thing. We don't want to see that. I like to hide it. So let's select that Light Poly group, or Light Poly Root, I should say. Go down to its display properties and set its visibility to no. Not no hide children. We want to see the children. We just want to hide that one object. And there we go. Now it's as if it weren't there. We now have a complete assembly with a root that we could instantiate at will and use for all kinds of different stuff. Sounds good. So let's save it. We'll go to our assemblies here. Right-click, Save Assembly. Go to our, let's see. I'm going to create a new folder for my light polys. Jump in there. We'll call this light poly basic.lxp. Perfect. Now, there's not an icon for this yet, but let's just test it and make sure it works. Let's create a new document, blank document in space. Go to our Layout tab. In our Items area, I'm going to find my Light Polys folder. There's my Light Poly Basic. I'll double-click it. It brings it in. I'll turn on RayGL. Looks like it is glowing. Click this. I can turn my luminous intensity down all the way to 0 so that it's not glowing or really hot. I can adjust my squareness. Perfect. Everything works. So let's set up a scene really quick so that we can create our icon for our basic light poly.